Okay Beep, it's time to play the multiplayer mode of the Persistence. To begin with, I'll be the VR player and you can use the phone. Ah Beep, it's so creepy. I really don't want to go around this corner. Ah! You turned out the lights. I knew you was going to work against me, Beep. You're so predictable. It's really taking a long time for the lights to come back on, Beep. Ah! Oh, my heart! Let's begin! First up, let's take a look at the gameplay. The Persistence is a stealth horror game that takes place on a spaceship. The ship is overrun by mutants and it's up to you to outsmart them, so that you can complete 5 missions. These missions take place on randomly generated floors, so you never feel quite at ease when navigating your way around the dark corridors. To help with the randomness is your map that you can bring up at any time, and you also have an ability that recharges over time that allows you to see through walls. Both of these you will be using a lot. The mutants all have different movement patterns, amount of health, and of course, attacks. So when you first come across a new one, either by seeing it or hearing it, it's an incredibly intense moment, as you need to learn what you are up against. The game isn't really like the Dark Souls series, but there is certainly a similar learning curve because you will die a lot. When you die, you reprint a new copy of yourself in a small hub area. The first character you have is free to print, but others do cost, as they do come with extra abilities. These other characters, or should I say crew members, are not available to print to begin with. You must find their corpse on the ship first. When you find it, you can take their DNA and a short voiceover is heard of their backstory. The shield that you have can prevent you from taking damage. Using it does use up dark matter though, so you can't always rely on it, especially at the beginning of the game, as the amount of dark matter you have is quite low. It does slowly recharge over time though. If you activate your shield at just the right moment, when an enemy launches towards you, it will stun them, which forces them to turn their back on you. This exposes them to a harvest shot. You can't quite get into a rhythm with these parries though, as the enemies do have both fast and slow attacks, so you really have to have a quick response time. If you sneak up on an enemy, you can also use the harvester. Achieving a harvester shot deals damage to the enemy and also supplies you with stem cells, which is one of 2 of the game's currencies for upgrading your abilities. Stem cells and fab chips are both found scattered around the ship. They can simply be placed in plain sight, or they could be in containers, or if you're feeling daring enough, you could receive a good amount of them for completing a side mission. These tough missions have you taking on waves of enemies. If you are victorious, you get to open up a supply crate. Not only will you find currency in these, but you will also get a schematic. These schematics come in different rarities, so it's incredibly satisfying when you get an epic, even more so when they randomly drop after killing a normal enemy. It has the same mental effect as a loot box, without stealing your real world money. The schematics are incredibly worth getting, as they enhance your abilities, such as giving you health each time you hit an enemy, and allowing you to teleport further. There is so many upgrades in the game, and they are all very beneficial. Some of the prices to unlock them are a little bit steep though, especially for the epic ones. They really will involve a bit of grinding, but the upgrade system really is what drives the game forward and makes the play, die, repeat formula very addictive. You can also upgrade your health, stealth, dark matter and melee damage nearby on another machine. The game also has a very good variety of weapons that can be printed off on fabricators. You must find tokens to unlock a gun first. These are also found randomly like the game's currencies. When you have printed a gun, you must wait for the fabricator to recharge. This sort of prevents you from becoming too overpowered, but if you really wanted to, you could just wait for the timer to go down, but that's no fun. There is no order in which you unlock the weapons, so you really can decide on your own playstyle. You get many different pistols, each with their own damage and firing rate. The grenades can lure enemies or create a black hole which forces enemies into it, and for melee weapons include lances and knives. The knives take some enemies out in one hit, but they do have a certain amount of uses that prevent them from becoming too overpowered. There is 2 guns in the game that certainly shine from the rest, and the developers know it, as they give them to you with unlimited ammo for a couple of the missions. These are the gravity gun, which is basically the same one from Half-Life 2. It's so much fun to use in VR to fling enemies around with, although unlike Half-Life, the gun can only pick up a few things, like health and explosive barrels. The other gun is the harpoon gun. It's silent, very deadly, and sticks enemies to walls. Because of the evil physics on display, it was my weapon of choice for most of the game. You can also fabricate one-use abilities, such as invisibility. This is really useful, especially if the game's toughest enemy spawns on the floor you're on. These bloodhounds are very powerful and can take you down in one hit. Luckily, they do show up on the map, but it doesn't make them any less intimidating at all. Some of these abilities can be slightly overpowered though. You can use the Ivy serum to turn an enemy into a friend who will fight alongside you. Doing this on a large mutant makes the first floors a breeze to get through, and it almost feels like cheating, as stealth gameplay takes a back seat. It is a nice change of pace though. The game also comes with a survival mode, which is basically the main campaign again, but you only get 10 lives. There isn't much change here, although weapons did seem to appear around the environment more frequently for me, but this may have just been luck with my randomly generated floors. Surprisingly, the game does come with a multiplayer mode, although it's probably not what you'd expect. A second player can join you by playing on their phone. The second player has a map of the area and can help you progress. They can do things such as open doors, place markers to guide the player, and disable sentry guns. Some of the powers must be unlocked first, so the phone player also has a sense of progression. If they want, they can be evil and work against you. They can turn off the lights, and they can even spawn more enemies. It's actually a fun little addition to an already amazing game. The phone app also has 59 pieces of artwork that you can take a look at. Now let's take a look at how immersive this game is. The graphics are slightly blurry. It's not too much of a problem, as most of the areas are quite closed in, but in the more open areas, the blur does become more noticeable. Your torch is useful up close, but it's not that effective when shone on distant objects. Smoke whooshes out of some containers you open, but not for a jump scare. Small little details like this really are great, and prove that the developers care about the environment they are creating. The jump scares are incredibly well done for a randomly generated game. They really did come at just the right time. It really is clear that a lot of care went into spacing them out. Pipes burst and tiles fall from the ceiling, and you can never tell when they're going to happen. Even though throughout the game, you will go through the same sections of corridors and rooms. When using the knife on a mutant, the transition is instant. Although it can be quite jarring, it does feel oddly satisfying, as your reflexes feel superhuman-like and you feel like you've got one up on them. The voice acting is great throughout and is what you'd expect from a higher quality title such as this. When the lady speaks about crew members, it does come across quite believable.
That's Al-Farsi. Or what's left of him.
He was a good exec. The best. Come on. Let's get a sample of his DNA, then we can get out of here.
The sound design really does add to the whole atmosphere. You hear banging on metal coming from down the dark corridors. Enemies grunt and moan, which gives you a good idea of their location. And the thuds coming from the massive mutant's feet really do sound intimidating. You don't hear much noise coming from the bloodhounds though. Of course you can see them on the map, but if you haven't looked at it for a while and you stumble across one, it's a really intense moment. The sound coming from the woman that has a screech attack is not only scary, but really does help with finding her location when she disappears. You hear her circling all around you, and the wait for her to reappear is very nerve-wracking. Now let's take a look at the setup and what controllers the game supports. I played this game in a seated position just under 2 meters away from the camera. The head tracking was perfect and the game did not make me motion sick. There is so many comfort options for you to mess around with, such as turning sensitivity. There is sure to be a setup here that will help you if you are prone to motion sickness. This game is played with the DualShock controller. The other controllers are not supported. Now let's take a look at the length of the game and what trophies come with it. The game took me around 8 hours to beat. This really will change from player to player though, because of how the levels are randomly generated. The trophy list is amazing and is very similar to proper non-VR games, which is something we don't quite often see with PSVR games. In total there are 44 trophies that can be achieved. There's 32 bronze, 7 silver, 4 gold and 1 platinum. You will receive some for completing each mission, killing a certain amount of enemies with a weapon, upgrading all of your abilities, and for printing off all 7 of the crew members by finding their DNA. The variety here is too much to go into, but just know that the platinum is quite achievable. The list does cover every aspect of the game, apart from the survival mode, which is a massive shame. Why there wasn't one included for beating the survival mode is such a wasted opportunity, and would have given an extra incentive to do so. And now it's time for the verdict. I usually don't like randomly generated games, but the fact that this is in VR and that the actual layout of the levels are done so incredibly well changes my whole mind. I enjoyed how well all the randomness flowed that I would have spent so many hours in the survival mode, but unfortunately this is my main issue with the game. The survival mode is only the campaign again with limited respawns. This game really is begging for an endless mode with online leaderboards attached. I'm sure it would have kept players returning to the game time and time again, although the trophy list should keep hunters engaged for longer. This game really is aimed towards stealth gameplay. You will die a lot and quite quickly when you get spotted. Previous floors do become easier as you upgrade though, and you could certainly take a more action approach when running through them again, especially with your ever-growing knowledge of the weapons, enemies and abilities. Learning how the weapons and one-use abilities work is so much fun. You constantly feel like you're improving with your playstyle, and the loot and upgrade system really pushes the game forward. It makes for an incredibly addictive experience, and it is very rewarding. This is most certainly a full horror experience on the PSVR. It's really not a small title that we see release all the time, and it is well worth your time. This is yet another game that has instantly gone into my favourite PSVR game list. Here's to working on another 100 PSVR reviews in the future, as long as it doesn't kill me. I wasn't joking! Look what you've done to me! But thanks everyone for being here. I really do appreciate it. What? Why? Well, at least I still have social media. What? Apparently I'm only 1% more entertaining than our seat! Pete never does any of the work, yet he always gets all the attention.
Me and you, we're not so different. It's tough being underappreciated. Maybe it's time to change that.
Beat t-shirts are now available. Check the link in the description of this video for more information. We finally made it to the 100th PSVR review, guys, so please give that thumbs up button a click if you have enjoyed them so far. It only seems like yesterday that I was writing the first review for Static. Actually, no, it doesn't really. This has been a very long journey. Oh no, I don't want to end on a negative, so here's some cheery music that will hopefully tempt you into subscribing.